But even that ruse would not have succeeded in the normal course of events, for the righteous Judah would never have lowered himself to immorality.
Well, okay, I don't get it. So how...
Of his own free will, Judah would never have united with her. So an angel forced him into the path of a harlot to begin the creation of the Davidic dynasty.
Oh, that's priceless. We love our patriarchs and their descendants so much.
So do you think that, like, Tamar was... What do you think what was really on her mind was becoming the ancestress of the Davidic dynasty? Because she was really a very spiritual woman, and that she found this whole harlot thing distasteful?
I noticed... I did wonder when Tamar was having her problem with Onan that it didn't mention any, she kept going back. So I was thinking, well, she seems to enjoy the act of coitus. And no, I don't know that she did dislike it. I don't know. And women want to have children, so I don't know. She's a tough read. But the idea that Judah was compelled by an angel to sleep with a hard woman seems to me implausible.
Judah's action must be viewed in the perspective of the time in which he lived. As the Rambam writes, harlotry was permitted in those times, just as non-kosher foods were not forbidden before the Torah was given. See, the Torah hadn't been given yet, so harlotry was acceptable.
I see. Yeah, but...
It's kind of like Nevada.
But then why did they say they're... Right. But then why does he say he's going to burn her once she's pregnant by harlotry?
Right. So that's why we have the ArtScroll commentary. So, I mean, that's pretty harsh. And let her be burned. Because Tamar was the daughter of Shem, who was a priest, they sentenced her to be burned. So the Rambam points out, the unmarried daughter of a priest is not liable to the death penalty, so there had to be other reasons for the death sentence. Mizrahi explains that there were indeed extenuating circumstances. Perhaps sexual misconduct was so rampant that extraordinary measures had been instituted to curb it, or the exalted status of the families that had been shamed by Tamar, Judah and Shem's, was sufficient to demand an unusual penalty. Judah condemned her to this punishment because he was a great chief, and his daughter-in-law's harlotry was an affront to his status, just as a priest's daughter who commits harlotry is condemned for having thereby profaned her father. The judgment would not have been meted out to a commoner.
Well, all I know is this. Then let's look at... If I look at Judah's behavior then, and this is what I see. He takes his daughter-in-law, who wants to have a child desperately, and sends her up back to live with her parents and abandons her, doesn't give her his other sons, and just leaves her to rot as a barren. Goes and sleeps with a prostitute just because she sees her there and he digs it, and has no problem with prostitution on his end. And then decides to burn the daughter-in-law who he abandoned because she was given child by somebody else. So it's not there's not a lot of respect for women in that narrative to me, and not a lot of righteous behavior on Judah's part, so far as I can see.
So Judah said in verse 23, chapter 38, "Let her keep, his staff, his pledges, lest we become a laughing stock."
Right.
For having pledged such things as valuable as a signet wrap and staff for such a trifle. Judah had not done anything illegal, and the items in Tamar's possession were far more valuable than the kid he had promised her, so that he would have been justified in investigating further to find the harlot, retrieve his pledge. Nevertheless, Judah was ready to forfeit the pledge, for it is improper to discuss sexual matters in public, even if they do not involve forbidden conduct. This is in stark contrast to modern codes of propriety.
Yeah. So they're saying in traditional times it was okay to sleep with hookers, but not to discuss healthy sexual relations.
Or even unhealthy sexual relations.
Healthy or unhealthy. Yeah, I mean, well, what do you make of that? I mean...
I've got a lot of thoughts, but I'm forbidden.
I mean, it's another moment where, for me, where it's like, okay, like, I guess if it worked for them at that time, good for them, but it just doesn't seem applicable today. One thing that jumped out at me from this is that it said that he thought she was a harlot, or he knew that Tamar was a harlot because her face was covered.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
That's how I find out which women are harlots.
Right.
And I go around West LA.
Right, his face is covered.
Really got me in trouble with some Muslim women.
Right. First, there's that. First level, I was like, "Oh, that's funny. That wouldn't give you a good success rate if that's how you judged him today, because your face covered is a sign of modesty normally." But then I was thinking, when you talk about the face, like in my experience, like women who are like hard women, like women who are hardened. So if they're sex workers or if they're whatever, they keep a lot of their pain and emotions managed internally. And so their face doesn't reflect what's going on. Now, an innocent woman, you just right. see what's going on. So, but that's something I've definitely noticed before. Like, and so I thought that's how he spotted a harlot. He said, "This is a woman who is keeping who's been through a lot, seen a lot, because she's keeping her real feelings and pain inside, and then showing something else externally. So that's a woman who has a lot of sex. Like, I don't know. It's just.
I mean, I've heard that many hookers find kissing more intimate than having sex.
Right.
That some hookers don't like to be kissed by their
right.
clients.
Has
that been your experience with hookers?
I have. I can say this truly. That I have no direct intimate experience with hookers, though I have known sex workers. Yes, no non-biblically sex workers, and yeah, I think that's actually kind of common enough. I mean, certainly they're not going to kiss someone until often they wouldn't kiss someone until they know that they're also going to get paid for the sex. So there is a human-to-human intimacy about kissing that you can remove from sex if you want. Right? I mean, don't you think so?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. It's interesting that she doesn't shame him when she's being brought out to be burned by presenting his stuff and everything. It reminds me of something I read by author Humphrey Knipe, that but in contrast to children who are shaming each other all the time, adults really shame each other in person. So it's one of those things, as people get older, they stop doing. But
when you say shame each other in person,
if you're all in the same room,
right?
Now they may write a blog that shames you.
Oh, they rarely shame you in person.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So
yes,
it's
that happens as you're growing up. You can see it happen. People will stop. I've seen fights break out only once somebody turned their back because they can't try to hurt someone while they're looking at them.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, I think that's there's a lot of truth to that.
I've had people who want to make requests of me to take down stuff, and it's really important to them to meet me in person and make me look them in the eye.
Yeah, well, at that moment,
tell them why I need to.
Yeah, they want to show you their humanity in service of making you do something that they want. Right, right. Very, very nice. Yeah. Well, see, intimacy can be manipulative. In that case, I would think that's an example of it. But yeah, well, she also, I mean, there's also, I think, a self-defense thing there. Usually you don't get, I think it's rare that you get, the only way to get someone to do something you want is to make them want it for some reason. Even if they're just scared or whatever, but you have to make them want it. And shaming someone is not a good strategy for eliciting wanted behavior, because it makes them hate you.
Right.
And when people hate you, usually, yeah, that's not so great usually. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe Tamar, maybe she was being that gentle again just out of self-interest, because she knew if she really pissed Judah off, she was in trouble.
So chapter 39, verse 6, Potiphar left all that he had in Joseph's custody, except for the bread that he would eat. According to the ArtScroll commentary, this is a delicate expression. Bread here refers to his wife.
Wait, okay, so
Potiphar left all that he had in
right.
in Joseph's custody.
Right.
Except for the bread that he would eat.
Except for the bread he would eat, and that's a reference to his wife. Well, it's